Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Bryan's Basement. Today we're going to be taking a look at the classic for Master System. Can you guess what it is? Can you give me a drum roll? Alright, it's Phantasy Star. This is a great game, so let's get right into it. Phantasy Star. Phantasy Star is important to me because, not because of Phantasy Star, but because of Phantasy Star 2. When I was growing up, my dad got a Genesis, probably in 89 or 90, and he got Phantasy Star with it. And I always grew up looking at this game, wondering about it, popped it in, hadn't ever played RPGs at a young age, so I kind of was daunted by all the text and wandering around and talking to people. I didn't know what to do. It was a lot for me back then. But flash forward 35 years or so, 35 years, and I'm ready to play it now. I've never played this one, so we're not talking about this one today, so I'm going to put it back aside. We're talking about Phantasy Star. So let's get into the Phantasy Star discussion. Phantasy Star is a Japanese RPG from 1987. It's pretty unique in that it has a sci-fi setting. The other main JRPGs didn't have a sci-fi setting. They were kind of medieval-esque, Final Fantasy and Dragon Warrior. Phantasy Star is pretty unique in that it also has a female lead character, which was not really done in the 80s in video games, so it's pretty cool in that regard as well. What more can be said about Phantasy Star? Well, I guess a lot, because I wanted to make this video, so let's go ahead and get right into some of the points that I wanted to get to, and we'll kind of run through them pretty quick. There's not that much, but I just wanted to hit on some things that I do really enjoy about this game. So let's get started. First thing that I really like are the graphics, and this is going to be a multifaceted conversation. So the first part of the graphics that I really enjoyed is right when you start out the game, you get a beautiful, drawn out scene. Well, not drawn, but computer drawn, but it has a very pastel-y type feel to the drawing. So I really like that pastel color that the Master System has to offer. I think that it's very unique, and the hardware for the Master System being a little bit different than the NES, it kind of provides you with some different graphics. So I think that's really one of the parts that sells me on Phantasy Star, is just how bright and vibrant the colors are. And that being said, what I was leading into, and my mind kind of got ahead of me, is the animations that they have. Those drawings, like when you first see the beginning and you see Nero and he's dying, reaching out to you. You see Alice in her pink dress, and so it's I think that those little drawings with the small bits of text really set the stage for the game. And on a wider note, I think that for me, that's one of the earliest examples of a console cutscene in an RPG. So I really feel they were doing stuff like that on the PC-88 for a while and other mediums, and they ended up doing it, they being Japanese game developers, ended up doing it on the TurboGrafx / PC Engine a lot. But I found it really cool and unique to see it on the Master System, and I think it's done really well in Phantasy Star. I think that it provides a pseudo FMV type feel to the game, where you're given this beautiful graphic of how the artists envision the characters looking, and it really helps set your imagination. Just to give an example, when you look in the owner's manual for the game and you look up the main characters, they're cool drawings, but they're line drawings, and they're completely in blue. as is the whole manual. The manual's not in color. So it's kind of hard for your imagination to go. It's not like, you know, another manual that's completely in color. Let's say like Zelda, for example. I mean, that one is a good example of a color manual that kind of gets your imagination going as well. But I mean, I'm not gonna like sit here and bash the manual and say it's bad or anything, but it's just not color. So I think that by them adding those animations in the beginning of the game and throughout the game with that kind of show you how the characters should look, it kind of gives you an idea of what the artist intended for the art style. And I think that that kind of helped lay the groundwork for some of the later FMVs that we saw in future games. So I'm not going to say this is like the granddaddy to all FMVs, but I think that, you know, it's interesting to see that the idea was being played around with on consoles even as early as this. So I really found that fascinating. Another thing that I really like about this game is the monster animations. When you're getting into like a battle, you see the monster on the screen, and the monster will do like a little movement when it attacks you. Granted, your character, you can't see your character, your guys are just text. You do see like a flash when you attack them, but the monster does have some animation. So there is some animation during the battle scenes. I know that with Dragon Warrior / Dragon Quest, you just see the monster and it's highly text driven. With Final Fantasy, it's kind of like you have that bar on the side and your characters do their little attack motion. So, but it's an interesting difference, and I think that the graphics really make you look forward to the battles and see what the monster's going to do next. Like, there's a skeleton that like throws up blood, and then there's like a dragon that spits fire, and you know they texture the sprites with, not texture, color the sprites with different colors to get extra use out of them. So you get all those classic tropes, but it still gave me a smile to see those animations, and it's really it's just got a neat like anime-esque art style, hand-drawn like 80s anime art style, which I really enjoyed. So I think, you know, the monster animations and those little like cutscene bits that I was talking about really helped me when I'm wandering around, because the overview when you're walking around the world, Alice does look a little stick figure-ish. I mean, granted, most RPGs, the characters look very rudimentary in the 8-bit when you're walking around the overworld, so I'm not gonna like hold it against the game, but I think that having that animation really helps to solidify the image in my head of what the artist wanted. So I'm sorry to say that like 3 times, but I just think it's really important that they did that in this game, because I think it really helps for somebody like me with kind of a vivid imagination to picture what they wanted you to think of. So I really like that. Another thing that I really love about this game is the sound. The sound is just this like just real like clicky, percussive kind of like chip tunes. It's just really good. Master System's got a really interesting sound chip, so it just puts out some really cool music that's just really unique and catchy, and it'll get stuck in your head. So I love the music. 10 out of 10. And it actually changes a lot, like when you're exploring on the overworld, when you get into certain dungeons, there's different music. There's a couple different tracks, so I was surprised at the variety of music in the game. I was pleasantly surprised. Really enjoyed the music. Lastly, the dungeon crawling in this game, really cool. The way you crawl through dungeons is just like, it's a 3D kind of, you're looking down the path, and then you can see if it's straight, or, you know, you can only see probably like 3 or 4 squares ahead. So you press one movement, you move 1 space. So it's you know, it's easy to map out if you want to draw on like a sheet of graph paper. your map, so it's cool in that regard that you can map it out. It's not like too crazy, but without a map, it's very, very easy to get lost. Very easy to get lost. So you always want to have a map, and you know, you have to have a light in the dungeons. It's like kind of how Dragon Warrior is. You have to have some sort of a light source. So it's, you know, it's just your classic RPG. So you're just crawling through these dungeons, going down, and you have to navigate, and it's just like a full first person view of just kind of a 3D, just rocks everywhere. But it's interesting. I like the way the perspective is. It gives you the just pseudo 3D feel. So I thought the dungeon crawling was cool in that regard. It's a little bit different than like your typical dungeon crawling. It reminds me more of like kind of like an older PC game, maybe like a DOS game. I can't put my finger on it. If maybe Might and Magic had a dungeon crawling style similar to that. I could be wrong about that. But yeah, the dungeon crawling was really, really fun in this game. So overall, just a fantastic game. I would highly recommend anyone who's interested in RPGs to check it out. If you're a fan of classics, this is definitely a good one. Some places that you can check it out are on the Nintendo Switch store. I think that that's probably the most accessible place to everyone. I think there were like some Japanese re-releases on the Saturn for the Sega Ages name, but now we have the Sega Ages re-release on the Switch store, and I believe it has some quality of life features. Not exactly sure what any of those are. I mean, I know in some games they give you the speed up feature, in some games they give you the save state, so possibly one of those, possibly more. But I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's a lot of fun. It's just your classic grind, buy stuff, grind, beat bosses, grind more. It's a grind, but it's a fun grind, and I think the graphics are just somewhat, they're breathtaking in certain regards. It's just such a different style in Phantasy Star. You get this kind of like Greco-Roman art style to all of like the villagers and the towns, and you go to some alien towns, so you talk to some aliens too. It's pretty cool. So I definitely can't recommend it enough. If you're really against grinding in games, this is not the game for you. But if you're fine with a little grinding and you like old pieces of history, I guess it is kind of old now. 87. It's coming on. Yeah, and so I guess this game is about 35 years old, or gonna be 35 years old in December. So it is a classic at this point. But if you like classics, and I think if you're watching this channel, you probably do, you should check out this game. It's definitely worth it, and I've heard the Switch copy is pretty good, so give it a shot. Let me know in the comments how you like the Switch version, and I'm looking forward to hearing more. Thanks again for checking out Bryan's Basement, and we'll see you next time on Bryan's Basement.